All right, how's everybody doing? This is D-Boy. D-Boy from West Coast Uncensored coming at you kind of early Sunday evening, about dinner time for me, a little bit after. Um, Wanted to hit you guys up with everything. A lot of stuff. As you know, we continue um, at West Coast Uncensored, still bringing out videos. I did one, I believe Friday, a little about the NFL, and today's going to be about the NFL. There's nothing happening. I mean, it's snooze button. NBA shut down. We would be at the end of we're approaching the end of March. We probably missed as many as in the schedule. We probably missed, I would say, 10 to 14 NBA games. So we'd probably be in that 70 range, early maybe 71, 72 games of NBA action would have been played. We end about, I don't know, about March 14th, 15th. I mean, excuse me, April. I have the NBA snooze button. We're getting play. We got reported that players on the Celtics and on the Lakers now had coronavirus, and the New York Nets. And the biggest name we know that they said reported had a coronavirus was one of the best players in the league who sat out all year because of his injury was Kevin Durant. So that's on snooze. Baseball was going to miss 2 weeks. Now we're looking at probably a month at the least. So you're looking at 132 game schedule. So you got 30 games taken away from baseball. That kind of not very good for baseball, especially if you're looking at some teams that threatening and you're looking at some of the moves of players coming to your team to take your team to the next level, either making it a playoff team or World Series competitor or whatever the case may be for your team. It's just sports on snooze control. There is not none. Of especially big three, there's the big four. If you add hockey, the hockey's suspended. We're all in lockdown, man. California, it's for sure. I know there's some other areas that are not. So we're gonna do a little video. The best action we had last week is because it's not NFL season. It's some of the business aspects of the NFL free agency. So free agency continued and went on as scheduled. It was just a little different because usually free agency is meeting the players and the organizations meeting, seeing a doctor to get medically cleared. That didn't happen. So they came to agreements without really a medical clearance, unless they took the clearance from them or unless they connected with a doctor in the area where the players that they signed are at. But from what I heard reported, that wasn't really a thing going over good. The NFL wasn't excited about that, and that really didn't happen. I wouldn't doubt if a few did. We had some really major changes. NFL, if you needed something to keep your mind off, everything going on, I guess free agency was definitely could keep your mind off because there was a lot of movements and some huge changes in the NFL and free agency. 20-year veteran, as I talked the other day, Tom Brady has went to Tampa Bay. TB has went to TV to be a Buccaneer. So interesting move. Makes sense. There are offensive weapons in the running game and in the passing game that makes Tampa Bay, and for Tom Brady, I could see where and being home, I guess, closer to the East Coast where his family and kids are, it makes sense for him in that area. So he stayed there, and he's got more weapons than he had in New England, man. He's got two really outstanding top 5 to top 10 receivers, and he's got two tight ends there, and OJ Howard and Brait that are really good. And he's got a good young running back, and in free agency, adding a running back, I could see them doing that or via the draft. And I got to add some offensive. And if you paid attention, their coaching staff's outstanding with Ayers, Bruce Arians running that team. He's really an outstanding coach, a player's coach. He actually coached Peyton Manning at one time. Bruce Arians, a standing coach. They got an outstanding defensive coordinator. If you really followed that team at the end of the year, that defense from week 10, 11, especially about week 10 and 11, it was getting better and better every week. So if with the coaching staff, with Todd Bowles, the coaching staff, has been a head coach and didn't have great success at New York as a head coach. But Todd Bowles is definitely a good D coordinator and very, very good D schemer, uses talents. Even when he was at the Jets' weakness was not the defense. Its strength was the defense. So they have some things in place, and they make some definitely moves offensive line, and maybe adding another running back, which you can do in the draft or you can do in free agency or trades. A lot of that is off the boards now. There's a few out there that you could probably go get, but some of the stuff was done. We had Phillip Rivers being a Charger his whole career, leaving and going to Indianapolis, which is a good move for him. I mean, the thing that Indy doesn't have that he requires, being the old school shuffle to the left, take the 2 steps to the right, 2 steps to the left, pocket quarterback. He didn't decline in his arm. The offensive line just was underachieving, and there's a lot of injuries. Indianapolis has got a really good offensive line that is young and is actually getting better. And the one free agent they had, they re-signed, so their chemistry they're pretty much intact. And the one guy who could have left in free agency re-signed with them, and they've built that chemistry with that offensive line for a couple of years. So actually, it's probably a good fit for Phillip Rivers. He has more protection. He has 2 running backs that are neither great, but they're both very good, and one very good, and one, right around that good to very good. And with that offensive line, you don't have to be great if you're a running back when you have a top-notch offensive line. The strength of that offense is the offensive line, which even will give him some help. So just a lot of movement with some of the players that have left and gone. The Rams, man, they cut bait. I talked about the other day. Todd Gurley's gone. Todd Gurley has left. He has. The Rams had did this. The Rams had set a situation where they paid a lot of money to different players to stay there to build a team to get a pop. Moving from St. Louis to Los Angeles, but now that's played out, and the reality is 2-3 years later has happened, and they're overpaid, and they have a lack of depth because they played guys big money, and they regretted this. It wasn't long after they made this deal that they regretted it during the next season. His injury, in the year they went to the Super Bowl, he pretty much at the end of the year wasn't on the field. They went and got a veteran running back who took his place. And if you remember, Todd Gurley really didn't play much in the Super Bowl because he isn't healthy. Last year he got some production, but not the Gurley production of 17 and 18. Why? Because he's not what he was. He's not that best running back, best running back in the league. He's just not. He's not. And he was cut and released. They cut bait with him. They owe him some money. Through that, they will owe him some money. He went to the Atlanta Falcons, who are giving him a 1-year deal for I think $6 million, and I think the Rams owe him $7 million. So he's still going to get about a $13 million payoff, and he's not the player he wasn't. The rumor was that year they went to the Super Bowl, and he didn't really play down the stretch in the regular season, and they relied on Anderson to be their main ball carrier on the road to the Super Bowl, and then Gurley really played limited ball in the Super Bowl, and then the next year he was missing games early and did get in middle, and they reduced his playing time, they reduced his carries. You would see spurts at times, but he just wasn't the MVP top running back that we were seeing before. Rumors were arthritis, so Gurley's gone, and he went to Atlanta. Atlanta cut way with Devontae Freeman and has him now, unless I'm wrong, Devontae Freeman hasn't signed. He came back from an ACL injury last year. He did share time with the other running backs. They did release him. As far as known, he could be a good signing for somebody. If you can get him in that money range of, some good money range, he could be, because this is just a day you don't have one back to carry the load like the old days. There ain't a guy that's popping off with 25 and 30 carries, and we'll see. So there's just been a lot of movement all the way around, a lot of signings, a lot of for the first 3.5 days, you had most of those A player signings. And then you started filling in with the Bs and guys who are very helpful, very important to winning games, filling in the positions you need with solid gut starters or solid depth. And you've seen the changes that came with that. So some of the guys who haven't moved yet, with all the quarterback moving and leaving, and there was a trade. Nick Foles got traded from the Jaguars. He got traded to the Bears. So does that tell me the Bears are saying they're giving up on Trubisky? Not necessarily, but it's a fire under your light that you're going to have to get better, and we can't leave the kid gloves on you. This day and age, there's really no patience for quarterbacks. In the old days, having a guy sit 2 to even 3 years, even there's a time 4 years. I remember way back in the day, guys would sit even as much as 4 years. I know that way back in the day with Kenny Stabler, who ended up being, I still feel, is the #1 quarterback in Raider history. Hands to me, even hands down. Um, didn't start until his 4th year completely. The job was him, and I think it might have been his 5th year. He got some playing time his 3rd and 4th year, but the starting quarterback position was not his completely till his 5th year. They had a veteran, the Mad Bomber Darryl LaMonica, and they just kind of let, he was playing from the 60s, and then as he started to fade and fade and fade, LaMonica was gone. Stabler was that. They don't have patience with these first-round draft picks. They're going to rush you and put you in. What are the Redskins going to do with Haskins? Were they, going to sign somebody to come in and take his job or challenge him? Young quarterbacks got to be about their business to grow quickly, learn the playbook, get involved into the playbook, start eating. If you don't eat and breathe this, and it's a lot about coaching and a lot about the system with the NFL. If you're not in a good system that fits you, your skills, you could be a guy that ends up being a lifetime backup. But if you're lucky enough to get in a system that fits you with a great quarterback coach and a great play caller and a great system that fits you, can be an all-pro, even possibly a Hall of Famer. The best quarterback in history, to me, is this is all said and done. I know people don't like to hear it, is Tom Brady. 9 trips to the Super Bowl, 20-year domination, 6 championships, way and far of any other quarterback in history. More wins than any quarterback in history, and as many trips than any quarterback in history. I know some people will say, well, this one, they only lost 1, and this one has no losses. The overall body work don't match, but stop. You're trying to make excuses you don't like him. I'm being unbiased here. I'm a Raider fan. Most Raider fans can't stand Tom Brady. Why? Because of the Tuck rule. Did that suck then? Yeah. But guess what? It was a rule. I let it go. But the reality is that team had the 20-year. Tom Brady was a 6th-round draft pick. He wasn't that #1 draft pick that came off the boat, came in, and you're saying, this is, guys, the next reincarnation of Joe Willie Namath or an all-time great. He came in and had to work his way up to get to the position he did. And then when injuries came and somebody who was above him at the time went out with injury, Tom Brady came in and did what he needed to do. And if you remember the early years of Tom Brady in that first Super Bowl trip, it wasn't built on Brady. It was built on a great defense and a good running game, and they had outstanding defense, and they were able to win close games. Later, you've seen the development of him being the mainstay in the foundation. Why am I saying that? It just, does the stars align for you to be that star? Is the system good? I mean, some of the things that are happening now with all this free agency, you got people moving, you got people going other places. Does it fit your money? I'm really watching some of the moves that some teams are moving, because there were some teams that I look at the Browns. People expected the Browns to pop off and even maybe win that division last year. The organization's been bad. The foundation of that organization's been bad. It manifested last year. People even question whether Baker Mayfield, their #1 draft pick, former Heisman Trophy winner, is a guy. This is a prove it, do it, to it, prove it year, because it's different than the Jets with Sam Darnold, a very young, good quarterback that was drafted high. Darnold's had a bad offensive line, so has Baker, but Darnold hasn't had the offensive weapons around him. It's wide receivers, running backs. They've just been kind of average. Robbie Anderson's been really pretty good, but Robbie Anderson is not a #1. #2 at best, and maybe just a 3 at slot receiver on a lot of teams when you start breaking in talent. The Browns receiving core, with what they have on running backs and receiving core, tight end, is outstanding. Teams would die to have their weapons. Darnold would die to have his weapons. Hear what I'm saying? So this year, bringing in a solid foundational coach, can the Browns turn the corner from a team that underachieved? Can that foundation get over the edge and become a good team? Because that division is tough. You have the Raven team, who's Now they made a couple moves. I think they even made a trade to solidify or a signing of their defensive tackle. And I go, dang, the Ravens, they just really add a good team added. They did lose in the first round, but I don't take that away. That happens sometimes. The Ravens will continue to grow and be good, and they look at their quarterback. Many people doubted that Lamar Jackson could do what he's doing. He's only did it 1 year. Definitely, it's not consistency, but I have no doubts that the way that system and the play calling, it's that offense is built for him with the offensive coordinator that will call plays and build that thing around him. And that's a foundation of a team like in that division, like into the Steelers, that have built a foundation of winning and having experience of going to the playoffs for now a number of years, that the Ravens have built their foundation. Now with the Browns, with all the talent, because the Browns are a very talented team on both sides of the ball, real weakness is offensive line. And why I said this from the beginning, they went out in their free agency and got one of the best offensive tackles in the league, which to me shows that they were on their game. They seen this is a weakness. We need a strength. We need to go get one of the better ones or one of the top 5, 6 tackles in the league. They went and got him, signed him. So what did it do? It already solidified their offensive line. And now in the draft, because they're drafting very low or high in the draft, low number, high in the draft, getting one of the better first-round picks, they can go get themselves maybe possibly another offensive tackle. And just like that, with some depth of signing, you solidified that which was your weakness, because really you got talent on defense and you got talent on offense. So the Browns are an excellent team to watch, but they have a division with the Steelers and the Ravens of two foundational good organizations, and they're not a good organization. And the Bengals aren't touching any one of those three yet. We'll see. But the Browns did go get a great offensive lineman that was part of what was happening with the Titans in that with Derrick Henry. They went and got possibly the best offensive tackle available. So that shows me, and I do like their new GM and their new coach. They are good foundational pieces, as long as the ownership says, do your thing and we'll be an owner. You got to build a good teams don't come from bad foundations. They don't. Don't swirl around any sport. Think about MLB. Good organization, bad organization. You don't see too many good MLB teams that have bad ownership and bad management. Think about it. You don't see it in the NBA. You don't see it in sports, because good foundation of good organizations goes with the foundation of a good team and building a good team. Bad ownership and bad foundations don't produce winners. It's just a foundational thing. My question for the Browns in their free agency, can they turn it around? Another one's the Raiders. Derek Carr, question mark. They brought in Mariota. Can Mariota and Carr, some people, I'm not picking and choosing who I like. I don't think Derek Carr's bad. I'm not sold that he is the top 4 or 5 quarterback in the league. I know that there's some reasons why to give him a chance. One of the reasons is when you had multiple offensive coordinators every year, you're a team that has lost a great foundation many years ago, because this was one of the great foundational and great organizational teams. But for the last 15, 20 years, this foundation has not been good. And when they brought in Gruden and they were doing things, at first I was like, here we go again. But then when Gruden's moved, I said, okay, I'm going to back off. Because if Gruden's going to build this team from foundational and put a good foundational in here, then we have to let him build. They're not going to win now. When people say, "Oh, they're going to win 10 or 11 games last year," I mean, you got to be on something, or you really don't know football and you're a fan. Even this year, what would be the improvement from what last year? 4 wins in 7 years, and the improvement on defense, and now the coaches they hired at these different positions, and then bringing Mike Mayock showed me. This is what really said, okay, I'm going to watch and see, and I can buy him, because Mike Mayock to me is a great talent evaluator. I've known it for a long time. The guys at ESPN that do these drafts that are there, and the ESPN guys, I thought Mike Mayock at NFL Network blew them away with his blindfolds on for years, blew away the guys, because his talent evaluation, even when he was announcer when Mayock was the announcer for Notre Dame football, one of the things that didn't, I didn't say he was a bad announcer, but one of the things that would take away to me from being his position of announcer was he would go into player evaluation, because that's what he is and that's what he loves. So him being a GM, working and evaluating talent, and you could see some of the young guys that he drafted And what they did last year from Jacobs to Crosby, from Abrams, that's the evaluation. And they have 2 first-round draft picks. So can they take it from 7 wins to 9 wins or to 10 wins? Can they do it? Carr had his best year ever, but there's sometimes in the decision making. But Carr didn't have a number 1 receiver. He didn't. The guy was considered number 1 is actually always been a number 2 at the Chargers, and actually the number 1 best guy was the tight end that they developed, Waller, who had an All-Pro year, one of the best tight end years in their AFC, deserving tight end. He definitely got signed an extension and a raise because he was a Pro Bowler, NFC Pro Bowler, 1,100 yards receiving was Waller. He was actually their number 1. So if they can add a legitimate number 1 with a very good offensive line, to me, one of the best rookie running back that came in the league, 1,100 yards, and he missed 2 games, and he produced 1,100 yards. You're looking at, if he plays those 16 games, you're looking at close to 1,300 yards, if not over, with a big game. So can they develop and take their game? They're in a tough division. So this free agent, I'm going to talk a little bit about that. There's a lot of signings. I'm not going to get into all of them because we'll be here for hours and hours and hours. I'm just going to talk a little bit about Dak is there. They signed and gave Amari Cooper some money, $100,000, 5 years. A lot of people, good signing. I do know you have to pay people to keep them, but here's my thing, not just with Cooper. The Cowboys have gotten a situation where they gave their defensive end a big contract. He had 3 sacks last year. They gave the running back, now is the most highly paid running back in the league. The receiver is a top 5 paid running back, but probably not a top 5 wide receiver in the league. What it did, it caused them to lose a cornerback that now is the highest paid cornerback in the league that went to Miami, Byron Jones. It caused them to lose. They've lost some depth now. And with this, it's actually the Rams model. It's what the Rams have been doing the last few years, and it caught up to the Rams. And if you're a Cowboy fan, you got to sit up there and wonder. You put Dak on what's it called? You didn't give Dak a contract, but you did put him on the tagged him. You made him franchised him, but you didn't give him his money. What will happen with that? You gave Amari his money, you gave Zeke his money, and you gave the defensive end his money last year. What this does, and this is what the Rams are doing. That's why the Rams are scrambling. From what I hear in the insider on the Rams are just scrambling. They just know they're with things. They were looking to trade Brandon Cooks. They ended up releasing Gurley. Would they release Cooks? Would they trade Cooks? I don't know that they would trade. He'd be a decent player, but I don't think he's a 1. He's making 1 money because they gave him money. They're scrambling because they know the position they're in the division fell. They didn't win the division after being the team for 2 years. They know that Carroll and the Saints are a team that always finds a way to bring cohesiveness, and they can do it at cheap prices at times and bring in people and develop. And because they got a top-notch quarterback in the league and Russell Wilson, get him a couple of weapons. They needed to strengthen their offensive line. They believe they did that they'll always be viable to threaten in that division. The Rams are looking and probably saying this team knows how to do certain things to stay relevant. I don't know that we can with the amount of money we paid all these guys. It got us to the Super Bowl, didn't get the win, but it was very short-sightedness to get to the goal, to a short-term goal, which I understand, but it's probably not a model that you would want to build overall for your team. And I see the Cowboys have went that route. The Cowboys have pretty much went the Rams route. And there's going to be no depth. That's why they lost some people. And I was looking at the Cowboys defensive backfield. They don't have any top-notch corner. It's going to be a weakness unless they go out in the draft and maybe pull off a corner, make a trade. This is what's going to happen if you don't have the depth. Look what the Rams have lost. And they lost their best number 1 tackler for the last 2 years, Corey Littleton. He left. They couldn't keep him. They didn't have the money to sign him. He went to Vegas. You're just going to lose these people. One of their offensive linemen left. And that's with the Rams. And the Cowboys, you know what? The Cowboys really almost followed the Rams model. The Rams did get to the Super Bowl, but took it on the chin. And the Cowboys are in a, this could get you. And then you didn't give your quarterback, whom you need to, I think has to be the first paid, if you believe he's a guy. My question is, you're going to franchise tag him this year, and you can do it again next year if you don't pay him. I heard they did offer him a very good payment, and that he did not take it. So that's interesting that he didn't take that. So NFL's interesting because Malcolm Jenkins left and went to the Saints. Tom Brady is now in the division with Drew Brees. Can the Bucs deal with the Saints? The Cowboys do have to deal with the Eagle team that was massacred by injuries that actually won the division with a ton of injuries last year. They were just massacred with injury. I mean, they were my pick to be the NFC representative in the Super Bowl. The Eagles were. But then the injuries just mounted and mounted and mounted and mounted. The Cowboys have to deal with that, and the Eagles have did a good job of. They've lost some people. They lost Jenkins. They lost Aguilar. They did some signing. They lost Jason Peters. And we'll get into that in a minute. So some of these divisions, you got quarterbacks coming in to like I said, you got Brees and Brady now in the NFC South. Interesting. You have the Eagles along with the Cowboys, and who will battle out? Sleeper team in that division to me is the Rams. Why? Is the Washington. Washington's been another foundationally bad team. Snyder's got a lot of money, but he has not been able to put a foundation there that's been worth a crap. People just in and out, general managers in and out, coaches in and out, just not have been able to build a foundation. But I'll tell you what, the hiring of the Carolina coach, that's a foundational, tough guy that knows how to build on a foundation. He will build his team inside out. I have confidence in him. If the owner and GM could get on the same boat and allow the work together with this new head coach that they have, what is his name? Carolina, I can't even remember his name. And I know him. Anyways, he played for the Bears, Ron Rivera. If this guy knows how to build a team, he had the Carolina team taking over a good coach, coaching under a very good coach that had Carolina a good team. He's very good. I trust that he knows what he's doing if the Redskins can get over their bad management and say, okay, Ron, work with the GM. You got car keys. Do what you need to do to make us a foundation. And it's not going to overnight because guess what you need? You need a quarterback. They drafted a young quarterback. From what I hear, the talk is they aren't so much crazy about his work ethic and his learning what he needs to learn, and his mistakes and getting over his mistakes and working hard after practice, before practice to get better. He's going to have to do that. I think they're going to bring in somebody. And I think they did sign somebody to bring in to push him. We'll see. That could be a little sleeper if they bring in a quarterback, but he does have a good foundation. If you give him the foundation, it won't happen in 1 year. They can get significantly better. But if you give him 4 or 5 years with confidence I have in Ron Rivera, and he can get a quarterback and then let him do the things he does with his defensive coordinator, they could have something in there and they can move their way. So the NFL will be interesting with this free agency and all the movement going on in free agency. And with the teams in division, how is your teams doing? Think about it. What did you like your team's moves? Did you like the team's moves in the AFC West? I mean, Melvin Gordon just jumped he jumped to Denver. That's what happened with that. Left the Chargers, went to Denver. I think the Chiefs are really organized well. I think the Chiefs are, definitely good. The 49ers traded one of their defensive tackles to the team I mentioned earlier where Rivers went. DeForest Buckner went to them to strengthen that defensive tackle. position. I think he will. I think that's another team in that division. The Titans definitely said, "Hey, you know what? We're settling on Tannehill. He's our guy." They extended him, gave him over 100 million, extended him. I don't know about that, but their offense, they did lose their tackle. Their tackle is the guy who went to the Browns. So, but their offensive line in general, they were good all across, and they had some depth. So, and maybe I don't know if that will be something they do. Their defense was solid, and the defense was good. What will they do? I mean, you got Tennessee, you got Houston, you got the Colts in that division. The Colts should be better and more founded. They got some things. How about Tennessee trading? I mean, Houston trading their wide receiver for what? I mean, it looked like they gave him away by what they got from it when you've seen some of the other trades, and people are shaking their head. I don't know. They did go get Randall Cobb, who was at Dallas for a year, so they did sign him. He is good. He's definitely at best a 2 into a 3, but he's definitely not Hopkins. So that's definitely some of the things that has transpired. There was a lot of movement, offense and defense. I mean, if you paid attention, there was a lot of action. Only the real action going on in sports since with everything being shut down nationally. So NFL. So this is top 10. This is some players that have not been signed. We're going to go start right around the number 1 player, defensive end, Clowney. It's the money and it's the trust. He's had injuries. He came off injury last year. He only had 3 sacks last year after having a really good 18 and 17 and 18. Had some injuries, had sacks. He definitely can be a playmaker and a difference maker. But he's looking to get paid somewhere top of the defensive end market. Nobody's biting on it, man. And then with them at this time not being able to have you go see their doctors, nobody's jumping on Clowney at this time. Maybe if he drops his price, they will. This will be interesting to see how this plays out. But nobody's jumping on the Javani Clowney. Nobody is. He's looking at 20 million plus. And then injuries. I believe the GMs and some teams who might be interested are saying, "Man, we have a fear because he's had injuries. He had a surgery last year, abdominal surgery, I believe. Teams are not trusting. They don't know what they're getting. And then the reality on this free agent signing is nobody can go see a doctor because you can't go you can't go into the organization or the building of the team you're signing with and see the doctor because of social distancing. So, and the NFL owners and the teams are not high on finding a doctor in your area where you can go in and out real quick. They're not high on it because first of all, you're gonna have players that you're signing living everywhere. That means you're going to have a doctor in a lot of different places or find one. They're just not doing it. So they did take the chance and sign people. They did. So, but Clowney's not got a job. Number 1 quarterback, Jameis Winston. Nobody's moved on him. It's interesting. Led the league in touchdowns, led the league in yards passing. And the thing that kills him is decision-making because he led the league in interceptions. He had 33 TDs last year. He threw for over 5,000 yards, which led the NFL. He had some huge games last year. I remember he played the Rams in Los Angeles, and he lit them up for nearly 500 yards. I think 460 yards passing, I believe he had. But there was games that he threw 3 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. He had 30 interceptions and 5 fumbles, so a total of 35 turnovers. And this team was 7-9. They had 35 turnovers from the quarterback position, and they were 7 wins and 9 losses. What if they cut that down from 35 to 14? Could they have won 4 more games? They lost 6 games by less than 1 possession in the 4th quarter. And many of those losses were late turnovers on drives or times they got the ball they could have drove, tied it, or possibly won it. He has talent, definitely threw for the touchdowns, and he threw for 5,000 yards. And, he couldn't ask for more weapons. Brady's got his weapons because he had 2 outstanding receivers with Evans and Godwin. Goodwin. So he's one. Not signed. There isn't any movement. There's no talks that he's talking to even teams. Teams are hesitant to take him. They don't trust the turnovers. They don't trust the decision making. 7-9, and you had 35 and 35 turnovers from a quarterback position. I'm going to say the impressive things, they won 7 games and they were close to 500 with having 35 turnovers from your number one position. God, I'm thinking if he had cut that in half, they might have won 3 more games. They might have won 10 games and been a playoff team. The next is Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson was rumored on going different places or even rumored on being traded. I think the money's too big. Nobody moved on him. I thought that somebody might move on him. He may want too much money. He had 2 years ago, he had a really good year, and you were looking at it. He had, I believe, 900 yards receiving, and people were saying, okay, he's going to upgrade. He's going to be a 1,000-yard guy. And he wasn't. He actually went back down into the 600s and 700s, 700 yards in a handful of 60 receptions. I think he had 50 receptions, went down. His numbers just went down, and he didn't rise his game. He didn't. Teams were hesitant on it. Looking to maybe get top 2 to bottom 1 numbers, and he could be a 2 at the best, but he's a slot guy. I could see why teams aren't going. I do think he'll end up somewhere settling, and I still think he may end up at the Jets because the Jets do need receivers, and he might be the guy. Another one is Brashard Perriman, good slot receiver, maybe a 2 to a 3, kind of in that range. Could help you, does produce, has some big games, had some big years, does make plays, possibly. I don't know the money, but he hasn't signed. Logan Ryan, former defensive back for the Patriots, was part of the Patriots. He hasn't signed with nobody yet. Was at Tennessee. He's available. One of the best tackles in the last 5, 6, 7 years has been Jason Peters. He is not going back to Philly. He hasn't re-signed. He's still at Philadelphia. So no, he's not. He's a free agent. But he is. Jason Peters, 33, 34 years old, has a number of injuries, getting up in his age, and has had multiple knee injuries, and has multiple. There's times he's missed some games and some part of the seasons because of his injuries. Not going back to Philly. Jason Peters, I've cut bait with him, and he's gone. One of the other bigger names is Sue. Sue has not signed with anybody. There's no word. So these guys really. There may be people they're talking to, some of them, and some of the words coming out like Winston and Clowney, that they really don't have anybody that's pushing them and wanting them. So that's kind of what's went on with free agency since the 11th when it started. The 18th. Today is the 22nd. So it's been 4 days in. Some of these are big names. I mean, Clowney, starting quarterback like Winston, and Sue both have made big money and been part of it. They're kind of the big names. The others are kind of like definitely could be good additions to your team, but they haven't been signed with anybody. Teams are filling in the roster, trying to get depth, and maybe finds a nickelbacks people can get in and get some playing time to help their team as that second to third wave of groups of free agents are in that. But these are some of the bigger names. I could see almost all these guys being signed with somebody. Eventually, they may have to drop their money. Jason Peters has been all pro for a long time. Clowney definitely has a lot of upside if he's motivated. But still, we're not sure. Another one would be Everson Griffin. Everson Griffin's been an all-pro and has cut bait, and even on Instagram and on social media let the Vikings know he had great time there, great organization, and I realized after he said it, he was like, I go, damn, he played not 10 years already? I remember him at SC. He's going. He hasn't going anywhere yet that he signed, from what I understand, but he did leave Minnesota. But I do think that Griffin will be picked up by somebody too. Let us know. Do some of these players fit maybe what your team needs to do? One of the things everybody's saying wants to sign everybody. Remember, there's a salary cap and there's a needs cap, and then you got the draft coming up, and you got to remember your money and your salary for the draft, because rookies will get more money this year with the upgrade of the salary cap pushing higher. A lot of good. The draft looks really good coming up. A lot of quarterbacks will be in this draft, and a lot of receivers in this draft. You can get decent receivers probably into the second to the third round. This draft is really receiver heavy, so if you want to wait for that, you can. A lot of good players coming up in the NFL draft, which will be in Las Vegas. But has anybody has heard and know that Las Vegas will have the draft, but there will not be no outside events like there usually is leading up to the draft because of the shutdown, there will not be any. So leave a note. Talk about your team, what you see, NFL, what's going on with the NFL. Leave some comments. Hit that like button, man. I need some likes. I'm just getting started, and I really love to talk, and I like to share my stuff and my opinions. This is West Coast Uncensored with westcoastuncensored.com. Also got a website there, and looking on West Coast Uncensored for people that would like to promote their business on my website. $10 a month. Say $10 a month. That's only $202.50 a week. And anybody that knows, that has a business, knows you got a write-off. So it's like paying nothing, but you would help me and my business, collaborate with you and your business, and I will put your business on my website. I will also do this. I will also, if you do collaborate with me and become a partner, guess what? I will do commercials. I will promote your business on my podcast. This is D-Boy from the only place you need to go for professional wrestling, for sports. It's West Coast Uncensored. This is D-Boy. You guys have a great day.